Setting spending priorities for the next budget cycle is the main task of lawmakers this session, and the battle over how to spend the state's projected $1.65 billion surplus is underway. Joining me in the studio to provide the perspective of the Senate DFL caucus is the Minority Leader, Senator Tom Bakk. Welcome.
Pleasure to be with you.
How are you changing your approach as a leader now that you're in the minority?
Well, it is much different. I mean, the legislative chambers are really, the day-to-day workings are run by the majority leader of the Senate and the Speaker in the House, and they make the day-to-day decisions relative to the flow of business, whether bills get heard or not. They're going to set the spending targets for all of the different budget divisions. So ours is really one more of a respond to what their priorities are going to be. We don't really know yet. We should know fairly soon. The Senate rules require that budget targets be given to all the divisions by the end of March. So it's a little more difficult when you don't know exactly what the flow is. I do think Senator Loehrke has been very good to work with so far, the new majority leader. He's got a tough task with only having 34 members. It takes 34 members to pass a bill. So he really has to have everybody here and everybody on the same page, and that's a tough job. We both have caucuses with a lot of diverse views from different areas of the state. Kind of keeping them all in the corral, I describe it sometimes as a real challenge. But he's been very inclusive so far, and I expect that as we move forward, and you saw it on Real ID, Democrats are going to have to be engaged and involved in the final passage. So we're going to have a little bit more to say than a party in the minority usually has because of the very close majority at 34-33. And the governor just this week did send a letter to Senator Loehrke and to the Speaker outlining where he thought the priority should be, when the deadline should be, so that we're able to have adequate time to be able to get the session all negotiated out and finish on time.
What do you think should be done with the surplus, the $1.65 billion that's projected?
Well, the other day we were at a legislative panel, the four leaders, and that was a similar question was asked as the final question that morning. And I happened to be the last one to speak, and I kind of looked down the row at the other three and said, you know, I think I've been here longer than the three other leaders combined. So I have I think a little more of a historical perspective of the ups and downs of state government revenues and expenditures. During the 90s, when the economy was really, really strong, we invested a lot of money. We cut taxes over several different years, and then when the economy slowed down in 2001, in that deep recession, we found ourselves managing deficits for more than a decade. And we used every kind of different accounting gimmick that you possibly could in order to keep the state's budget in balance, which we constitutionally have to do. And I don't want to return to that. I mean, there was a decade there where even things that everybody agreed were important, we couldn't do because we had no money, because we had overcommitted when times were real good. And we're in a period like that now. We're 8 years into this economic recovery, coming off of the 2007-8 recession. And I just would urge restraint on the part of the majorities when they set their targets, because this period of economic growth and forecasted surpluses will not last indefinitely.
So you're in agreement with Commissioner Franz that we need to have a cautious approach?
Well, I actually suggested on the day that the budget forecast came out that the additional $250 million or so between November and now, that we actually put all that into the budget reserve because we are at an 8-year recovery. We're closer to the next recession than we are away from the last one. And that's the reason that we've been trying to build larger reserves so that we can do a better job of managing revenue shortfalls. So my caution is to not overcommit on the spending side or on the tax cut side. Don't drain the budget reserve. We got to make sure that we've got adequate resources for the next economic downturn, which will come.
Well, and speaking of the budget reserve, it's being an option to pay for the Republican Reinsurance plan is to pull some money from the reserve and from the Healthcare Access Fund. Another healthcare proposal is the governor's Minnesota Care buy-in. There's also ideas about a virtual high-risk pool out there to help deal with the individual market, that part of the health insurance market that has been on the verge of collapse. If some of these policies are enacted, do you think any of them will work?
Well, you know, the big uncertainty is what are they going to do in Washington, D.C., and how is that going to impact states? I think it's about a certainty that it's going to impact states in a negative way. That's why I feel very strongly that we not raid the budget reserve for some one-time fixes. The early rebate bill that helped people in the individual market who didn't qualify for the federal tax credits took $326 million out of our budget reserve. One-time money for some one-time relief, did nothing about costs next year. I actually voted against that. I didn't think it was prudent. And if you look at the actual tax policy around it, because of that rebate, people's federal tax liability will go up, and they're going to be pretty surprised when they see that as their premium deductions go down. So it wasn't a very well vetted proposal. People that make $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year are all going to get a 25% rebate on their insurance. I do hope that this whole reinsurance idea that we're moving forward is vetted better than the first proposal was. But I'm not going to support it if it drains the state's budget reserve, because we will need that at some point.
Two more things I'd like you to weigh in on before we run out of time. Education. It seems everybody can agree that more money needs to go towards education. Where would you like to see those dollars targeted?
Well, as a caucus, I think most of our members probably would like to see some additional money on the K-12 formula. Myself personally, I have a bill that puts some additional money, about $29 million, into small schools with less than 1,500 pupils, which are largely in rural areas of the state. We've got a real challenge out there in many of these rural school districts that are small. They don't have the economies of scale that larger districts have. They have declining enrollment in a lot of these rural communities, and they're really struggling to continue to provide curriculum. So myself, from a personal perspective, I hope we can do something that will help small schools, because they seem to be the ones struggling the most in maintaining curriculum. But I think the interesting thing about the early talk about the Senate Republicans' budget targets is they're talking about spending $600 million of general fund on transportation. Senator Senjum has $200 million in his bonding bill of cash. Senator Nelson is talking about a $400 million target in education. You know, so you get the $1.6 billion goes pretty fast when you start chipping away that way. Those things I just mentioned to you are $1.2 billion right there. We haven't even talked about higher ed yet, or economic development, and everyone seems to be pretty committed to do something with broadband. The Supreme Court Chief Judge was in to see me, and the courts need $50 million. The state has pension funds that are badly underfunded. They need about $180 million to prop up the state's pension funds of all of our public employees, state and local, around the state. So I don't think there's enough money to satisfy the spending attitudes that I'm hearing kind of go around the building. So the challenge for Senator Gazelka is to figure out how you divide that pie up. And there's a lot of talk about a large tax bill of $1 billion or so. That's just not going to happen. The governor's never going to sign that bill. He shouldn't sign that bill. A tax bill along the lines of what was vetoed last year, I think, is probably in the state's prudent interest. I believe it was about between $350 and $400 million. You can do a lot with that much money. And the fact that last year's tax bill had the vote of 89% of the legislature shows you can do a lot of good tax relief that's important to people with less than $400 million. You don't need $1 billion.
Senator Bakk, we've got to stop. But I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on with you.